Do you enjoy discovering interesting facts about Anchorage? You'll love this edition of the Anchorage Memories Club.
First, Hans and Jerry Kirshner tried farming their Spenard property on McRae Road, but they were not successful. Then, in 1951, they opened the Garden of Eden, and the rest is Anchorage history. It wasn't much to look at. It was just an old Quonset hut, but the food they served quickly became the talk of the town, and the Garden of Eden was the place to go.
Mary, do you remember Snow White Laundry and Cleaners? In 1916, Yusuke Harikimura and his wife Katsuyo arrived at the tent city on Ship Creek that would become Anchorage. They took over a hand laundry business and changed the name to H&K Hand Laundry. By the way, there was no running water. They did everything right there on the shores of Ship Creek. Later, the Kimuras opened their Snow White Laundry and Cleaner business.
In 1915, with most of the railroad workers and others living in tents, Ulysses Grant U.G. Crocker decided to open a business that made and repaired tents. It was a perfect match. In addition, they also made and repaired awnings and sleeping bags. Not long after arriving in Tent City, Crocker opened their first store on 4th Avenue between H and I Streets. When they first opened for business, they specialized in making mattresses.
And speaking of firsts, the first church in Anchorage was established in 1915. It would later become Holy Family Cathedral at 800 5th Avenue. Now, it wasn't much to look at, but it was better than walking. What am I talking about? Well, in 1935, the Anchorage Police Department was still on foot. That's right, occasionally they borrowed citizens' cars and even took taxis to fight crime. But in the 1940s, the department purchased their very first patrol car. It was a used Ford, and they paid $63.75. Try that one today. Well, Henry Emard brought the first telephone exchange to what would become Anchorage in 1914. By the way, it was first used by the Alaska Railroad Commission while they were building the railroad right there on the banks of Ship Creek. And our look at Anchorage history brings us to 1922. Bolt's Hardware Store offered free space for the Anchorage Public Library. That's right. While the Anchorage Memories Club does not know where Bolt's was located, it's likely that it was on 4th Avenue.
In October 1938, Lorraine Harrison, the Hatbox, and the Presbyterian Church Choir brought the first artists from outside of Alaska to the town of Anchorage to perform. The artist was soprano singer Margaret Bowen.
And here's some interesting information about Anchorage's very first neighborhood. Do you know what it was? Well, early pioneer Thomas Jeter built a cabin on a lake that became known as Jeter Lake. That's now Spenard Lake. But Jeter was in an area that was not approved for homesteading, and he had to leave. In around 1911 or 1912, it is thought that Jeter may have moved from his Jeter Lake cabin and built a new one on what is now Government Hill. In 1915, as the grid for downtown Anchorage was being laid out and the first lots were being auctioned off, Anchorage's very first neighborhood, Government Hill, was being built while railroad workers were still living in tents along Ship Creek. Now here are some comments from our North Stars. By the way, that's you. Tom sent us this memory. He said, I love the Anchorage Memories Club and remembering the good times in Anchorage in the 1970s when I was a teen. Your story about Stuart's photo rekindled memories of spending lots of time in that store. During the Fur Rendezvous dog sled races, we'd stop in to buy more film. We took plenty of photos back then. We'd warm up, look at some jade, and dream about buying fancier cameras. And Tom goes on to say, thanks for doing what you do to remind us of Anchorage history. Charles had this comment. I was a Stuart's Photo employee, in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. You didn't mention their jade mine in northwest Alaska. They sold jade from the store until Oro's passing. Well, Charles, thank you for your comment and for bringing up something that we missed in our story. Next, Don and Maureen remember the fur rendezvous. Thanks, Mike and Mary, for refreshing our Rondi memories. Yes, I marched and played trombone in the West High Band, and the brass got plenty cold. It sure did, Don. Thanks for the comment. Now, did you enjoy reading this edition of your Anchorage Memories Club? We sure did. It's always interesting when you discover something new about Anchorage. Until next time, Mike and Mary, the Anchorage Memories Club.